Joining me today from the magnificent Earthtone9, we have Karl Middleton in the house. He's here to talk to us about their wonderful new album, In Resonance Nexus, out now on Candlelight Records. Karl, welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. I want to kick things off by just sort of, I was the one who wrote the review of your album in Devolution, so I'm not going to collapse into superlatives today, but Earthtone9, to my ears, has always been like one in a league of one in that you're completely unique sounding. And now I know why I think this is, but I wanted to know if you hear it the same way I do in its uniqueness and where you think it comes from.
I think, um, yeah, on a general level, I don't, unless a band is doing the stuff that they want to hear that they believe no one else is doing, even if they're somewhat delusional, that you would, there wouldn't be a reason to make music, to try and be creative and expressive and channel some sort of unique voice. Now, obviously, that sits in a context. You know, Earthtone9 is a heavy band. Some would say a heavy metal band, and so there's a genre orientated thing. But I feel like it's that the cliches because it's true. You know, we knew what our favorite bands were, and we were trying to combine those ingredients to make a new soup.
Mm.
And so, you know, because of the time where we started operating, weird there'd been like a weird fallow time in like metal. Nothing really after Pantera, maybe Machine Head. There were a bunch of bands that I don't think you would have called them legacy bands then, but like previous generation bands that I don't necessarily think they'd stalled creatively, but like the ground had sort of fallen out beneath them, like Anthrax, bands like that, killer, consistent bands. Um, and yeah, we liked the newness of new metal, where the it was like it felt like the question was being posed: what is heavy and what is metal? You know, and so what you got was a lot of, um, I guess, rap being pulled in terms of vocals and rhythms, drum rhythms, and simple riffs, and then you know fashion and pop culture things were coming in that wouldn't have previously been seen,
Mm.
and so even if the outcomes were really like of their time and of that place, it it's a cool question, you know what I mean? And so our thing was, well, we like heavy music, we like Sepultura, but we also like Tool, but we also like the Deftones, but we grew up on Testament,
Mm.
but we also think Iron Monkey and Crowbar are killer, and we like Corrosion of Conformity and Kaya.
Brilliant.
What might that sound like in a soup?
Yeah, and I think it sounds
Um,
a bit like you, I suppose.
yeah. And you know, over time, what you sprinkle in changes, like the emphasis shifts.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I guess it's been variations on that theme. I don't think we didn't go out of our way to be musically different. I don't think we were just doing the things that we were genuinely interested in. And for like the core instrumentalists at the beginning of Earthtone, so Owen, Joe, and Graham, they had their previous bands. One was like a very precise groove metal band, and one was a death metal band. So you know, a lot of technical complexity,
Mm.
and they just felt somewhat done with that, and they wanted to do something that felt powerful but was simpler and looser,
Mm.
which is you know why on those early recordings we were experimenting with recording as much as live as possible, and you know taking that sort of done is better than perfect
Mm.
adage and being like, does the recording embody humanity and energy and atmosphere? And maybe there are still some mistakes in it.
Yeah. Well, I've
Not
always,
you know not tolerating shit, but at the same time trying to find that middle line between personality, which
mm,
is humanity,
mm.
and yeah.
I've
That was a
always
long ass answer. Sorry.
You're fine. I've always felt that your music has a healthy dose of melody alongside the crushing heaviness, and thanks to in the most part to my ears, to be the tonality in the vocals, even when you're bellowing, it seems to be in tune. I've never heard it done quite like that before. There are other vocalists who do similar things, but everything has a tonality. Even if it's like the heaviest thing ever, there seems to be a melody to it, which I find absolutely intriguing when I listen to it. Is that something you're consciously working on, or is it just a happy thing that happens when you're performing your
Um,
vocals?
mm, it, it's somewhere in the middle, actually. I feel like, when I was learning how to sing, it was basically driving around in my car trying to ape Phil Anselmo and Burton C. Bell,
Mm,
um, and then Chino, folks like that. And
mm.
so, I always remember reading a Zach Wild thing where he was like, my best riffs are me not being able to play riffs that I like and coming
Right.
up with something different.
Yeah.
And so this was like a version of that where you're trying to do something else, but your units come through because you're not the person you're trying to mimic.
Right.
And so yeah, but I had vocal lessons. I guess I've got a particular ear for music and music melody rather, and musical motifs that are just like the stuff that I go to almost instinctively,
Mm.
and that, I guess, that comes through even in the non-melodic stuff. The
Yeah.
music's in a key. It would be weird if the vocals didn't fit in, and I guess I'm tuned into that, and I want it to feel. It's one thing to create tension through sitting on a passing note, or leaning into sort of notes that don't feel unresolved, but
Mm.
that's that's again melodic choice.
Absolutely. I mean, it's another thing that strikes my ears and makes me like, I'll admit it, Earthtone9 fan is your music's very physical. It has the ability to be very expansive 1 minute and then snap taut the next. And it's that it kind of gives it a feeling that it's like a living organism in itself. It's breathing almost, you
Hmm.
know? And yeah, I think that the plaudits for that have to go to the rhythm section a lot because your rhythm section has their work cut out, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, historically, with this new record, we've got a different drummer playing on it, and that's one of the key differences. So we've gone in a much more metal direction. But
Mm,
sure, um, on the earlier records, early records like Psy and Graham, and on the first demos, it was Justin Greaves from Iron Monkey. They're great drummers and a great bass player who sort of locked in and did interesting stuff. And then I guess on Art Tangent, it became a little bit more streamlined, where the bass to a much larger extent was following the bass, but um, sorry, the bass was following the guitar. But yeah, that I think that's been an element of the band that distinguishes it from other bands of our
mm,
era. You know,
absolutely.
I guess there are some notable exceptions. I'm just trying to think. So, bands like Polkas, who were
Mm.
leaning more into Killing Joke sort of
Oh yeah,
repetition and territory, but that's very um, drum rhythm orientated.
absolutely.
And so, it's not like we were in a tribe of one. There's there are bands generations before, and so it felt like we were sort of carrying the torch. And
Absolutely.
Graham, our kind of first bass player, was he was actually the musical maverick in the band in terms of real left field listening. So he was there listening to a lot of world music, or Peter Gabriel. He loved Cliff Burton. Um, just in terms of that guy's musicality and what he brought to that band. Graham liked Voivod and Celtic Frost. So that like outlier leaders in
Absolutely.
music, you know. And so I think I hope we kept a piece of that when he left. But yeah, that was part of our musical makeup.
Absolutely. The production on the new album is exceptional. Who's to credit for that? The
It's
producer,
Lewis John,
Lewis
who
Johns. That makes a lot of
did
sense.
Employed to Serve,
Yeah,
Ithaca, yeah, bands like that. Yeah,
very
I mean it was,
solid.
yeah, I mean it was, we could have gone with what we'd done before, and I think if we were left to our own devices, we might have veered in that direction, just because we were quite conscious that we were pushing the intensity of the music and leaning in a particular direction, and sometimes it feels good to be in a safe, solid place in terms of a working relationship and almost like knowing the results. But Darren Toms, who A&R'd the record for us for Candlelight, was like, I think you should work with this guy. I think you should meet him. You know, I think he could bring something fresh to what you're doing, and it's good to shake things up. And
Yeah.
so, you know, part of this record was embracing that, and yeah, we got something that sounds amazing. And not only is he technically great, but he's a great writer. He's a great performer. He's a great sort of, he can intuit what it is a band is looking for and make it happen. You know what I mean? So all of the great stuff that you need from a legit producer who's gonna help you realize your vision and to some extent sort of amplify it beyond the point
Absolutely.
where you could do it on your own. You know, so yeah, we're super happy with the result.
Absolutely. From my own memories, my first time experiencing your band was about turn of the century. It sounds like a long time ago, doesn't it? Turn of the century. But I think it was the Lost Weekend. It was a big
Yeah, Docklands. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Well, I went along to that and upset somebody because they wanted to see Nine Inch Nails. But the first band on I saw that weekend was Earthtone9, and I,
Okay. Nice.
my friends were all talking about Earthtone9, and it was one of those bands you kind of had this following that it was like it just seemed to leak. You know, it's like you're all in on some secret that I wanted to get in on.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And it was always that feeling like this music's actually like way more clever than all of the other stuff that's around at the moment. And yeah, it was seemed that at that time there was yourselves and another band I spoke to last week, Orange Goblin, who seemed to be like
Hmm.
sort of ubiquitous and doing all the sports. Like if I was
Okay.
near the Astoria, there'd be one of your bands would be supporting, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So so
Yeah. We had a run.
what do you remember of that time? Because it was a special time for me. Because I think like there were
Mm.
great British metal acts were coming out there, but this is before we had metalcore and a lot of bands sounding the same.
Yeah.
There was a very unique style to each of the bands. You all had your own identities. It was a special time. Do you remember anything from that era?
Yeah. I mean, I remember being really busy. I remember really enjoying it. I remember also being pretty competitive about it. So, you know, we were in our 20s, we were quite young. So there was a bit of a why are they doing, how come they've got that opportunity when, you know, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I mean, there was cool stuff happening. I mean, um, there were a lot of good bands around
Mm,
from, you know, Lab Rat, Iron Monkey,
mm,
Medulla Nocte, um, Polka. You know, there were lots and lots of great bands, and you know, Pitch Shifter were kind of like the granddaddies as far as we were concerned. Not that they were particularly older than us, but they had started out really young,
mm,
and they had achieved a lot by the time we sort of came around and started. You
mm,
know, but it felt like there was lots of possibility, but it also felt quite like there was a glass ceiling. You know,
mm,
it because I guess it was before, it was an era of physical product CDs.
mm,
Vinyl was a very very marginal thing, and so it was about individual territories kind of thing. And
mm,
now we've got this much more global sort of fluid mix of stuff going on. So, in 2000, if you had told me that there would be 3 legit arena bands from the UK and that one of them would essentially be a DIY band, I would just think you were absolutely talking insane. And for, bands to have come from that, either be inspired by metalcore or deathcore, to have outgrown lots of the trappings of that genre and to have distilled their sound, incorporated very memorable elements, and still be themselves, it's remarkable. It's a remarkable time in music.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, just for your listeners, there are lots of other notable bands, and there's probably some that are younger or newer than I'm aware of, but While She Sleeps, Architects, Bring Me the Horizon.
Of course.
Those are, but it would be, when I was a kid, even Motorhead weren't an arena band.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, true.
Like the greatest and arguably the most important rock and roll band in the history of rock and roll.
Yeah.
At their peak, were eking out 1 or 2 nights at Hammersmith, which equates basically to 1 night at Wembley Arena.
Absolutely.
Half a night at the O2. And so, it speaks about some of the quirks of this era where, when I was a kid, I think I spent most of my money on buying music, and then a little bit of it going to shows. But now, because music's available at very low cost or no cost, you can spend your spare money as a punter on shirts or going to show. I guess there are more avenues through which you can experience doing a band thing. But yeah, it's wild to me.
Yeah.
That bands of that level of extremity are playing Alexandra Palace, the O2, Wembley Arena. It's just, it's incredible. Yeah. And their audiences are young, and they've been around for 15 years. It's just, again, when I was 14, I was just like, oh, Iron Maiden are old as shit. I'm going to listen to Metallica. And Iron Maiden have been going for less than 10 years at that point.
Yeah.
So it feels like things have contracted and expanded at the same time into this mad vortex.
But I think one thing that Bring Me the Horizon haven't had to deal with, that you had to deal with, the bands of your era had to deal with a lot, was the press, where we're getting into what we're saying about global reach. It seemed quite frustrating for me from the outside looking in at the time, that every UK band that did quite well, it was like, is this the UK's answer to insert American name here?
Yeah.
So it was like the amount of bands who were the next Metallica, or it was like our Earthtone9, the next Deftones, or Tool, or and it was just lazy.
Yeah.
It was absolutely lazy, and you don't get it these days so much. Like Bring Me the Horizon are the only Bring Me the Horizon. It's
yeah.
Do you think you were handicapped by that a bit? In the it was all about breaking America.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know. I think it was partly to do with the time, partly to do with some of the tropes of journalism of that era, which is, if I had a small bag of gold for every time there was and they're gonna beat the Yanks at their own game.
Right,
It's just like, well, what is their own game? Their own game is making music and being the best that they can be. But the thing, when you get to look behind the veil, you realize that journalists, magazines used to work on advertising spend. Advertising spend comes from major labels. Like, advertising is linked to editorial, and the readers want to read about something which is somehow exotic or other. And so being a domestic band that could potentially play your hometown once a month, it's not exciting. That, you know what I mean? Because there's an element of availability. Whereas a band that's going to come in from multiple thousands of miles away, that has a different lived experience, that are going to speak to that, and it's going to sound interesting and exciting. When I was a kid, for me, that was Biohazard. Never been to New York. I mean, I'd never been to New York at that point. That blend of street culture that was hardcore and hip hop orientated, it was captivating. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted some of it.
Absolutely.
And so, how many bands did I neglect when I was a teenager that were worthy of my attention? But it just didn't resonate, didn't seem exciting. And so, it's a tough thing, because there's always the band that lets their music do the talking and don't have an image or don't say anything. But it's hard, because you have to be interesting and compelling in many different ways to vie for people's attention. That's the practical reality of doing anything that can sit under the umbrella of entertainment. And Clutch are a great band.
Wow.
They do let their music do the talking, but and they're a cult band. Great, more power to them.
Absolutely.
But they're like casuals would argue that they're not interesting. And sometimes Earthtone was guilty of being a bit facetious. So the whole thing initially, it was about no talking between songs, pure energy and abandon with the show, but that couldn't really translate at that point in time. So we just got so sick of people saying, oh, they let their music do the talking and they have no image. We were like, if you want an image, fuck you, we'll give you the shittest, weirdest image imaginable. So we're going to buy a load of shirts from Topshop and grow tramp beards. Fuck you. And of course, about 500 people thought it was hilarious and or loved it. And the rest of the music loving population was like, what is this? But hey, high stakes game. Sometimes you roll the dice and you realize that you've shot yourself in the foot.
Was it those frustrations that caused the band to have these long gaps between records? Because
I guess when we first broke up, we'd done 3 records in 24 months. We lived together and we worked together. We literally lived in a townhouse in Nottingham together for 2 or 3 years. It felt like the sort of thing where if you're going to work that intensively, it's like you light a fuse and it's finite. And then eventually you just burn out on it, you burn out on each other.
True.
And sometimes things fall apart forever. Sometimes you can walk away with a bit of dignity and a bit of space and it not be a permanent thing. But we didn't know that at the time. It just felt dumb and it felt unexciting to us. And like there was lots of interest, lots of people were being kind to us in the press world, but it hadn't translated and we hadn't stepped up as much as it felt like we needed to commercially for there to be the next. We weren't a new band anymore, and journalists had run out of stuff to say. There were other new bands coming through, so it just felt like it had done its thing. And then a few years passed, and I think we all felt like we remembered good stuff rather than the shit stuff. And it also felt like what we were doing there were really pivotal creative relationships, and we hadn't sort of explored everything that we could do. And so it felt and there were people that still seemed to be interested in what we were doing. In all of my subsequent bands, people were like, oh, Earthtone, I'm going to do this thing again, which was heartening, because when you get far enough away from a situation and you realize that you've done something that by any small measure stands the test of time, people still give a shit about it.
Absolutely.
That's powerful and wonderful. And it's to be celebrated, not kicked away with disdain,
Absolutely.
And so there was that when we regrouped in 2010, and then we made that crowdfunded record, and it at the time it just felt like the natural thing to do, to make a sort of quite grown up, quite mid-paced, adult sounding album. And then I got a job, moved to Detroit, Michigan for 5 years, and then COVID happened, and then before you know where you are, almost a decade's passed.
That's easy to lose sight of that period of time as well. That period of time just put a few years on everything.
It feels like 3 years just went in the bin. I mean, it wasn't. It was happenstance rather than intention. But now we got this record out, planted a flag in the sand, and it's like, our passion, our consistent passion, Owen and Joe and I, has been like heavy, intense music.
Mm.
And it feels like we've found a way of expressing that again, instead of feeling like that it's not, we're not in the right time of life to be making that sort of music.
It's
You know, it feels like, you know, heavy times make heavy music, and it's been
absolutely.
a fucking weird few years.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I've heard that from a few bands over the past couple of years where they've sort of said, "This is our lockdown record. We wrote this in lockdown. That's why it's intense." And we, you know, and also like I've often said, like some of the best music in the world came out of Reagan era America, when people were pissed off, and
Yep.
everyone's pissed off again, and the records are better. And I have to say, In Resonance Nexus is absolutely ferocious. It's not like, it doesn't sound like a band sort of saying, "Hey, remember us?" It's like, no, 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 we're gonna kick your fucking door in. Like it's a really
Yeah.
it's intense record. It's that I was listening to it again today very loudly, and you can just hear the push-pull, sort of like the dynamics happening in the music that you get when a band's truly on fire. And that like total hats off for that. I'm looking forward to
Thank you.
seeing it. I'm looking forward to seeing you play it live. And I'm going to get the chance in a few weeks at Arctangent Festival, which is
Nice.
wonderful stuff. Yeah, can you clear up something here? Right, so Arctangent Festival, obviously you've got an album called Arctangent. Is there
Mhm.
any relation in that at all? Was it James Scull that was
No,
just a
I
big
mean,
big fan of the album, or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah?
James likes the band and liked the album, and and yeah, I was at a gig. I mean, it must have been before 2013, and yeah, we'd gone to see the Bronx at the Firkin, and Mark Claydon from Pitch Shift was like, "Oh, you should meet this dude James. He runs a festival called 2003, and they want to start pulling the heaviest stuff out of it and put it in a festival and call it Art Townsend." And I was just like, "Oh no way, rad."
Mhm.
But yeah, there's no affiliation aside from, I guess, he
He
thought
likes
it
the
was a
name.
cool sounding word. But yeah,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, just three buttons on a science calculator.
yeah. Well, I mean, and it's a perfect festival for you guys as well. I mean, to be kind of even in just in name associated with what is, I believe, the best festival in the UK. I it's my favorite by a country yard, country mile even. So yes, you're playing this year. Is there any more live stuff beyond that? Are you back on the road after that?
We've got a warm up show on the 4th at the Black Heart, which I think that's sold out now. That's just like an album launch
Mhm.
show. Not just an album, it's an album launch show, so we're pumped about it. And we've
Yeah,
never
yeah.
played the Black Heart, and it feels like it's going to be a sort of coming home. We haven't played London for a while, and just from looking on our social media, it looks like a lot of our old crew from way back are going to come. So it's going to be
It'll be
a really
wild.
lovely familial hang, I think. And then we're also playing with Helmet at the Electric Ballroom in December, which is going to be
Awesome.
like a bucket list moment for us. You know, our band's named
Absolutely.
after
Yes.
Helmet lyrics. So
Yes. Oh, well,
this is
that's the other thing I was
this
going
is
to clear up.
beautiful.
Is that true? Yeah, it comes from Earthtone Sushi,
Yeah,
right? Right.
yeah,
So,
100%. And we were at the time when we were trying to find a name. I guess it was that period of time where it was quite a norm for bands to have almost like a color or a shade and then a number. So Linear
mm,
77, Liberty 37. There was
gotcha.
1 minute silence. That was just, I guess it was of the time, but no one really noticed that we also had similar constructed names. But yeah, so originally it was like, oh, Earth Tone, and then we looked it up. It was like, oh, the sort of the tone of death or the shades of death, and we were like,
Mhm.
oh, that sounds magic. And then in the original iteration, it was Earth Tone to the power of nine, like to make it feel
Ah.
mathematical and like like
Mhm.
a an order of magnitude kind of thing. But then it got so like verbose and tedious to be like Earth Tone to the power of nine that it just became Earth Tone 9.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Well, I'm massively, massively looking forward to seeing you at Arctangent this year. It's been playing the album to death. So is there anybody you're looking out at the moment? Who's on your playlist at the moment? What's ringing in your ears at the moment?
not so much super new stuff. Um, I'm digging that Wolves in the Throne Room most recent
Oh,
EP. I
yes,
think it's the Crypt of Ancestral Knowledge is rad.
absolutely.
Um, I always give Behemoth a listen to.
Oh yeah.
There's a band called Ramsey Pazuzu that I really like.
Oh yeah,
Um,
great. Yeah.
yeah, been digging that last Russian Circles album.
Mm.
Nice and riffy. I saw them at Tangent last year actually, and they were
Yeah, they're quite a band, aren't
incredible.
they? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was beautiful. Um, yeah, just all that kind of thing, dude. Still love what I love. Listening
Mm.
to a bit of Morbid Angel,
Oh yeah.
bit of shoegaze,
Back to the
bit of
classics.
a yeah. I was just admiring your Alexis on Fire hat. Actually, they're one of my favourite
Oh
bands.
yeah. It's funny, you've name checked two bands that I've recently interviewed. Alexis on Fire and
Okay.
Wolves in the Throne Room.
Oh no way.
Yeah. I actually got to meet Aaron from Wolves in the Throne Room. He was so not a letdown. Everything I hoped it would be.
Amazing. Yeah,
So
amazing.
so yes, right. Well, thank you so much for being with me here today. It's been an absolute
Oh, no
honor.
worries.
And I will see you at Tangent. And have a black belter with
Excellent. Look
have a
forward to it.
have a belter with helmet as well. That'll be a hell of a night.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'm so excited about it.
Oh mate, yeah. For people of our vintage, that's a hell of a gig.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
I'll just be there nerding out for the whole show.
yeah, man. And it's a anniversary helmet show as well, isn't it? Are they playing
Yeah,
meantime?
that's right.
Or is
Well,
it
I think it's
Betty?
the 30th anniversary of Betty.
It's
Yeah.
Betty. Yeah,
So
yeah.
what my understanding is, they've been typically doing these shows without a support band, and they kind of play two sets.
Mm,
So I imagine that they're going to play two 45-minute sets, and we'll just do 45 minutes on the early side of things, and then get to watch them be magnificent.
absolutely, absolutely. Paige Hamilton, what a legend. Right. Thank you very
Mm-hmm.
much. Thank you very much for being with me here
Cheers,
today,
dude.
Carl. Take care.
Take
See you
care.
now. Bye bye.
See ya. Bye.